Have you ever felt the eerie sense that you've lived many lives, that beneath your everyday routine lies a past life begging to be remembered? Maybe you dream of places you've never visited or speak a language you've never studied. Strangely enough, you're not alone. Across centuries and continents, children and adults alike have recalled entire lifetimes they couldn't possibly have known. Today, we're diving into 10 jaw-dropping reincarnation stories, each loaded with strange details, unsettling coincidences, and the kind of proof that might leave even the toughest skeptic speechless. 1. The Pollock twins, England. A haunting loss and an uncanny return in 1957. Tragedy struck the Pollock family of Hexham, England. Two sisters, Joanna, 11, and Jacqueline, 6, were killed in a car accident. Their parents, John and Florence Pollock, were devastated. Yet John held on to a peculiar belief. He prayed that the girls might somehow return to them. A year later, Florence gave birth to twin girls, Jennifer and Gillian. Although twins ran in neither parent's family, the Pollocks chalked it up to fate. But soon, unsettling clues emerged suggesting these twins might actually be Joanna and Jacqueline reborn. Birthmarks and memories. Jennifer bore a birthmark on her forehead, resembling the scar Jacqueline had. She also had a second birthmark that matched one Jacqueline had on her waist. As the twins grew, they asked for toys that had once belonged to the deceased sisters, toys they'd never seen. The family had stored them away, but Jennifer and Gillian could describe them in detail. When the twins turned 4, the family returned to their old neighborhood. To their parents' astonishment, the twins recognized landmarks they shouldn't have known, even pointing out the school Joanna and Jacqueline had attended. At one point, upon seeing the spot where the accident occurred, the twins were gripped by inexplicable terror. Fading memories and ongoing debate. By age 7, the twins' recollections gradually faded. Skeptics argue that parental influence or confusion might explain their knowledge, but the Pollocks insist the details were too precise. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist known for studying children's past life memories, flagged the Pollock twins as a prime case for reincarnation research. Though they eventually led normal adult lives, the Pollock twins still stand as one of the most puzzling modern examples of possible reincarnation. For many, the question remains, could two lost souls truly have found their way back to the same family? 2. The Bridie Murphy case, USA. A hypnotic regression launches an era in the mid-1950s. Amateur hypnotist Maury Bernstein put Colorado housewife Virginia Tighe into a deep trance to test the idea of past life recall. Much to his shock, Virginia began speaking with an Irish brogue and claimed to be a woman named Bridie Murphy, who lived in 19th-century Belfast. The revelations spilled out in session after session, with Virginia rattling off details about Bridie's childhood, family, and daily life. A voice from 1800s Ireland under hypnosis, Virginia recounted Bridie Murphy's birth in 1798, her marriage at a local church, and her view of the world, mentioning unique regional phrases and naming shops, grocers, and neighbors. Bernstein recorded these sessions on tape, eventually publishing the transcripts in The Search for Bridie Murphy, 1956, which soared to bestseller status and triggered a global fascination with reincarnation. Investigative frenzy skeptics and journalists scrambled to see if Bridie Murphy had actually existed. Some historical references matched, like archaic terms and certain local specifics. But many details were contradictory or impossible to verify. This did nothing to quell the public's fascination. In fact, it fueled a media storm. Record shops sold, come-as-you-were parties, and entire talk shows debated the Bridie Murphy phenomenon. Significance and skepticism. Critics say Virginia may have subconsciously absorbed Irish tales from neighbors or popular culture, while believers argue some historical tidbits were too obscure for her to have known. Regardless of one's stance, the Bridie Murphy case catapulted reincarnation into mainstream Western culture, prompting thousands to explore past life regression therapy. It remains a cornerstone example in discussions of hypnotically retrieved past life memories. 3. Swarnlata Mishra, India. A child's startling pronouncements. Born in 1948 in Madhya Pradesh, India, Swarnlata Mishra was just 3 when she began describing a previous life in a city called Kutni, over 100 miles away. She insisted her real name was Bia Padak, and that she had a house with distinctive balconies and visited a specific temple regularly. Swarnlada's parents initially ignored these claims, but as she grew older, the details became more insistent. The journey to Kutney when Swarnlada was about 10, her father took her to Kutney to test her statements. She guided them through the streets and pointed out a large house, claiming she once lived there. Cautious but curious, the father approached the home's occupants, relatives of a deceased woman named Bia Puduk. The family tested Swarnlada with trick questions. She recognized them, recalled the names and relationships they tried to scramble, and corrected them on intimate household details. She identified a hidden room where Bia's personal belongings were stored. The stunned relatives found themselves addressing Swarnlada with the respect they'd shown the departed family member. Validation and ongoing study. Dr. Ian Stevenson later investigated Swarnlada's case. He found over 50 verified facts that matched Bia Puduk's life, far exceeding mere coincidence. Swarnlada mentioned traveling to a city that only Bia had visited. She recognized the distinct layout of the family temple, as well as an uncle who had a unique physical deformity. The consistency of her story, even under repeated interrogation, has made Swarnlada Mishra one of the strongest modern examples of past life recall. She eventually grew up and these memories faded, but her childhood revelations remain a gold standard for reincarnation researchers worldwide. 4. Carl Eden, England, World War II pilot soul and a factory worker? In 1972, Carl Eden was born in Middlesbrough, England, to an ordinary working-class family. From a young age, he was plagued by recurring dreams of being a German Luftwaffe pilot named Heinrich Richter who died when his plane was shot down over England during World War II. This bizarre claim seemed especially out of place in a non-German, post-war English community. Disturbing details of combat. Carl, by age 5, drew detailed sketches of cockpit controls, German insignia, and aircraft that soared in World War II. He referred to typical Luftwaffe terms, calling them by names that baffled his parents. Even more chilling was his repeated mention of a bullet from below that caused the crash. Proof from the past. When Carl was 11, construction workers uncovered the remains of a German bomber and a partial skeleton near the edge of Middlesbrough. Records indicated a Luftwaffe plane had indeed crashed in 1942, and one crew member was never found. Carl's father took him to the excavation site. The boy reportedly froze and muttered about the final moments, describing injuries consistent with the uncovered remains. Tragedy and legacy. Tragically, Carl Eden was murdered at age 22 by a co-worker. Locals whispered that Carl's life ended violently, as if fate repeated itself. While official records never conclusively identified the remains as Heinrich Richter, Carl's detailed knowledge remains baffling. The case stands as a rare instance where claims of reincarnation intersect with physical evidence discovered decades later. 5. Imad Elawar, Lebanon. War-torn memories in a land of conflict. In Lebanon, stories of reincarnation are not unusual, particularly in the Druze community where past life belief is relatively common. Yet Imad Elawar stood out when, at age 2, he began describing a second home in a distant village. He claimed to have died violently and insisted he had children in that other life. A determined search. Imad's parents, initially skeptical, relented after he repeatedly named individuals and places they had never heard of. A local sheikh recommended traveling to the area Imad referenced. They found a village where a man had died around the time of Imad's birth. Members of that man's family tested Imad with private questions. Only their deceased relative would know. He answered them with eerie accuracy. A somber reunion. Among the details Imad recalled was the location of a hidden box containing personal keepsakes. When escorted to the house, the boy pointed to a dusty corner of the attic, describing its contents. To the family's astonishment, a box that matched his description was discovered, holding photographs and letters. Imad recognized the faces in the photos, naming relatives by personal nicknames not used publicly. Reverberations in a region ravaged by civil strife, Imad's story provided a moment of unity as neighbors from different backgrounds marveled at the possibility that life and love might endure beyond death. While the boy eventually resumed a normal routine, his childhood claims remained deeply respected among his community, reinforcing the Druze concept that souls migrate through various bodies and lifetimes. 6. Susie Smith, Brazil. An orphan's claim of a rich past. In 1995, social workers in Sao Paulo discovered a 6-year-old orphan named Susie living on the streets. She told them she had once been a famous singer with a huge mansion and a staff of servants. Given her dire living conditions, no one took her fantasies seriously until she began naming actual districts of Rio de Janeiro she couldn't have visited. The mysterious singer's life. Susie gave details about a woman named Anna Carolina Smith who, she insisted, was herself in a past life. She claimed Anna Carolina had died in a car crash on a coastal road. She provided the make of the car, a classic 1970s Brazilian sedan, and described an estate near Ipanema Beach. Intrigued, her social worker reached out to local journalists for help in verifying Susie's story. Startling verifications. Old newspapers revealed an Ana Carolina da Silva Smith, a lounge singer popular in Rio clubs during the 1970s. She died in 1978 in a car accident on a coastal highway, just as Susie described. The child recognized photos of Ana Carolina's beachside property from library archives, pointing out changes in the layout. She even recalled personal details about the singer's life, from a well-known romance with a soccer star to the stage costumes she wore. Life goes on. Susie was eventually adopted by a family in Sao Paulo. As she grew older, her recollections faded but never fully disappeared. A few local news outlets ran stories about her case, though it never gained massive national attention. Still, among those who met her, it left a lasting impression, a destitute child claiming memories of a glamorous singer, bridging social divides and suggesting that rebirth could place a once affluent soul into the harshest circumstances. 7. Master Rinpoche's Young Prague, Tibet. An ancient tradition of rebirth in Tibetan Buddhism, the idea of Tulku, the reincarnation of a revered lama, is part of centuries-old tradition. Monasteries often search for children believed to be the reborn masters, testing them with objects that belonged to the previous lama. One of the lesser publicized but equally intriguing stories is that of a child recognized in 1992 as the successor to a humble teacher known simply as Master Rinpoche in a remote district of Kham. Remarkable knowledge and choices. The boy, then 4, identified Master Rinpoche's old prayer beads from a collection of nearly identical ones. He insisted on wearing a particular type of wool robe the Lama favored. When shown ancient texts, he pointed out which volumes Rinpoche had annotated. Elder monks described him as eerily reminiscent of their beloved teacher's mannerisms, right down to the way he sipped tea. Though Tibetan monastic circles are sometimes criticized for orchestrating these successions, outside observers who examined this child found little evidence of manipulation. The boy recognized obscure locations in the monastery known only to senior lamas, including a hidden library. New path? Same soul? The case remains lesser known outside monastic circles, but for the local Tibetan community, it reaffirms the principle that enlightened beings consciously choose their next rebirth to continue guiding devotees. While Western skeptics see a structured selection process at work, believers see it as a living testament to reincarnation, reflecting the continuity of spiritual leadership beyond the boundaries of mortality. 8. Gus Taylor and grandfather Augie USA family reunion. Beyond the grave in rural Ohio, the Taylor family experienced an unusual phenomenon when their toddler, Gus, began identifying with the name Augie. He insisted that Augie was me, referencing his late grandfather, August Taylor, who had passed a year before Gus was born. Photographic confirmation. As soon as Gus could speak in sentences, he demanded to see my old car and described details of the small workshop that August had maintained. Gus's father thought it was nonsense, until the boy recognized August Taylor in old family photos instantly. In one instance, the father tested Gus by showing a group photo with multiple men. The toddler pointed to August, naming him correctly and adding personal anecdotes about the day it was taken. The button box episode. One of the most convincing twists involved an old tin box of vintage buttons that August Taylor had cherished. The box had been forgotten in a cluttered attic. Gus led his puzzled parents to rummage through dusty items until they uncovered the container. He became emotional upon opening it, naming specific buttons that Grandpa Augie had supposedly collected at flea markets in the 1970s. No living relative even knew these minor details. Mystical link or family myth? To outsiders, the Taylor story sounds like a heartwarming anecdote of a child's imagination. But the family insists Gus had knowledge no one else possessed. By age 7, Gus seemed to lose interest in his Augie identity, as if the memory of that prior life naturally faded. Still, the experience left them with a sense that love and consciousness can span generations, bridging the gap between grandfather and grandson in ways defying easy explanation. 9. Chun Wai's Dual Lives, Thailand. A monk's surprising confession in the outskirts of Bangkok. An 11-year-old named Chun Y began spontaneously chanting Pali scriptures, a language used in Buddhist texts that he had never studied. Curious neighbors discovered he could recite entire stanzas typically memorized only by ordained monks. Chun claimed he had been a revered monk from Chiang Mai in his past life, describing the temple's architecture and routine. Journey to Chiang Mai. Chun's parents, motivated by curiosity, took him on a 400-mile trip to Chiang Mai. Upon arriving at a prominent local temple, the boy reportedly walked straight to the monk's dormitory area, identified the abbot's private quarters, and described parts of the compound that had been remodeled in recent years. The resident monks tested him with prayers and doctrinal questions, stunned by his advanced knowledge. Hidden prayer wheel. One shocking validation occurred when Chun pointed out a hidden prayer wheel behind a statue, something that few outside the temple's inner circle knew about. He also recognized an aging monk, addressing him with a unique nickname only one particular abbot had used. The older monk collapsed in tears, convinced that the spirit of his old colleague had returned. The cultural embrace word spread quickly, attracting local media. While some suspected the boy had been secretly tutored, no teacher could be found. Chun's case fit neatly into Thai Buddhism's acceptance of reincarnation, especially for spiritually inclined souls. He underwent some schooling at the temple, but later returned to a normal life in Bangkok. Whether or not he ultimately rejoined monastic life is unconfirmed, but Chun Y's story stands as a potent example of reincarnation claims intersecting with established religious tradition. 10. Lucia Matteo, Italy. A classical music prodigy with a past in northern Italy, 1989. Born to non-musical parents, Lucia Matteo shocked her family by playing complex piano pieces by ear at just 3 years old. She insisted she remembered them from a past life, claiming she had been a modest music teacher in Venice who died in a house fire decades ago. A fire's shadow. Lucia had inexplicable nightmares about smoke and flames, describing in detail a vintage Venetian palazzo. She insisted that in her previous life, she'd lost precious sheet music in a fire. Her frantic nightmares included calling out names of colleagues that no one recognized. Venetian discovery. Curious, Lucia's parents traveled to Venice when she was 7. Lucia guided them to an old music conservatory near the Grand Canal. She identified a small lounge where teachers once gathered, shockingly pointing to charred corners still visible from a 1950s fire. An elderly janitor recalled a piano instructor named Elena M., who died in that fire. Lucia recognized Elena's photograph from school archives, claiming that was my older face. Bridging eras through melodies. While official records didn't detail every fact Lucia provided, the parents verified enough to conclude something extraordinary was happening. The child's advanced musical talent and intimate knowledge of the conservatory convinced them of a link to that tragic event in the 1950s. Lucia's story circulated among local pianists, but she eventually shied away from public attention. Her experiences serve as a mesmerizing example of how creative gifts and traumatic memories might span multiple lifetimes. Extended reflection. Reincarnation's mysterious horizons. No conclusion. Taken together, these 10 incredible tales span continents, cultures, and eras, a patchwork quilt of experiences that challenge how we define life, memory, and identity. From small children naming obscure relatives in far-off towns, to older individuals unearthing hidden artifacts linked to people they supposedly once were, each story stokes that timeless question. Could our consciousness truly transcend a single lifetime? Science grapples with these accounts in various ways. Psychologists point to cryptomnesia, forgotten or subconscious knowledge, while neuroscientists propose potential illusions or confabulations. Yet the sheer volume of verifiable detail in many cases defies any neat explanation. When a 5-year-old leads investigators to a secret stash of letters or identifies an unknown artifact in an attic, it's hard to dismiss as pure fantasy. In cultures where the idea of rebirth is embedded, like parts of India, Lebanon's Druze community, or Tibetan monastic traditions, such stories fit comfortably within communal beliefs. People there often greet reincarnation accounts with less skepticism, offering systematic tests or spiritual validations. Meanwhile, in Western societies, each new case of past life recall incites waves of fascination and debate, reflecting a longing to find something more in the ephemeral nature of existence. Whether you approach reincarnation from a scientific vantage point or a metaphysical one, these stories serve as bridge points, areas where anecdotal testimony and empirical curiosity intersect. The concept resonates with something deep in human psychology, an enduring hope that love, memory, and personal identity can surpass the boundaries of death. For those who've lived these experiences, it's not a matter of hypothetical belief but an urgent, lived reality that can't be easily dismissed. What emerges is a sense that our world might be more interconnected than it appears, with past, present, and future weaving through one another like threads of an elaborate tapestry. In some cases, trauma or unfulfilled desires seem to carry over, like a pilot's violin end, replaying in a new life. In others, a gift or profession transcends centuries, echoing in a child's surprising talent. Even the nightmares or phobias that plague these reincarnated souls may stand as residual aftershocks from tragedies long past. Meanwhile, researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson, Dr. Jim Tucker, and others have painstakingly cataloged hundreds of such stories, forming a large, yet not entirely conclusive, body of evidence. Patterns do recur. Most children with past life memories speak up between 2 and 5 years old, recounting a prior existence that ended violently or abruptly. By age 7, these recollections typically fade, leaving families and investigators only with testimonies recorded at the height of the phenomenon. Critics point out that any single case might be tainted by parental suggestion, media influence, or fraud. But collectively, these stories remain difficult to explain away. They provoke a deeper reflection on the nature of identity. Is who we are truly confined to the genes and environment of a single birth? Or might our souls, or consciousness, or essence, wear bodies like garments, discarding them at death only to don new ones in an ongoing cosmic journey? Beyond the scientific puzzle, the emotional resonance of reincarnation stories is profound. For parents grieving a child lost too soon, the notion that children can, and do, return in new bodies offers a kernel of hope. For individuals grappling with inexplicable memories or severe phobias, the idea that these might stem from prior life traumas can be surprisingly therapeutic. Past life regression, though contested, has become a psychological tool for confronting deep-seated anxieties or unexplainable personal fixations. In many ways, the phenomenon of reincarnation stands at a crossroads, part spiritual testament, part anthropological curiosity, and part scientific frontier. It calls into question how we define self, urging us to imagine that consciousness might be less tethered to physical form than we ever believed. Some quantum theorists even entertain the possibility that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, persisting beyond the dissolution of the physical body and remanifesting wherever conditions allow. At the everyday level, these stories remind us that life is more mysterious than it appears on the surface. They challenge the cynic in us, the part that wants neat, contained explanations for every oddity. For the families and communities who've witnessed these events, reincarnation isn't just a theoretical puzzle, it's a phenomenon that can rearrange worldviews, reshape relationships, and endow existence with renewed meaning. It can push us to act with greater compassion, aware that our next incarnation might just place us in someone else's shoes. In the end, these 10 extraordinary cases might unsettle you, intrigue you, or spark a sense of wonder at the possibility of living not just once, but again and again. They leave the final question wide open. If even a fraction of these stories are true, how much do we really know about who we are, or who we've been, across the centuries? Additional discussion. The search for meaning beyond the physical. As we continue to examine these remarkable reincarnation cases, it becomes clear that their implications stretch far beyond the boundaries of anecdotal curiosity. They challenge not only our understanding of personal identity, but also the very nature of reality itself. What do these cases tell us about our place in the cosmos, and how might they influence our journey through life? For centuries, humans have grappled with questions about mortality. Ancient civilizations built monuments and created elaborate rituals not only to honor their dead, but to ensure that the soul would continue on its journey. In these traditions, death was seen as a passage rather than an end, a threshold to an eternal cycle of transformation and growth. Modern reincarnation cases, like those we've explored today, echo these ancient beliefs in striking ways. They provide glimpses into a continuity of experience that transcends a single lifetime. One striking aspect of these cases is the consistency of detail provided by young children or individuals in altered states of consciousness. These memories often emerge in the most unexpected moments, during play, while dreaming, or even in a fleeting moment of clarity amid everyday life. Such detailed accounts, when cross-referenced with historical records or verified through independent witnesses, begin to paint a picture that is difficult to dismiss as mere fantasy or coincidence. Critics suggest that these memories could be the result of suggestion, confabulation, or even the inadvertent influence of overheard stories. Yet, the sheer specificity of details, names, dates, personal idiosyncrasies, and even physical marks across multiple cases from different parts of the world makes it hard to attribute everything to simple coincidence. Each story forces us to ask, what is the source of these memories? Are they echoes of a past life that the soul has carried forward? And if so, what does that mean for our understanding of self and continuity? The idea that we might be more than just the sum of our physical parts has profound implications for how we live our lives. If our consciousness is not confined to a single lifetime, then every emotion, every lesson, and every act of kindness might ripple forward through countless existences. This possibility can encourage a deeper sense of empathy and responsibility. When we consider that our actions today might influence not just our future but that of our next incarnation, we may be inspired to live with greater compassion and mindfulness. Moreover, the potential for reincarnation also redefines our understanding of loss and grief. For those who have experienced the pain of losing loved ones, the possibility that these souls might return in another form can offer comfort and hope. It's a notion that reaffirms that relationships may not be severed by death but are transformed, allowing for the continuity of connection across lifetimes. Families touched by such cases often find solace in the idea that the essence of those they lost still lingers, guiding them in subtle, sometimes inexplicable ways. From a scientific perspective, the study of reincarnation sits at the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, and even quantum theory. While mainstream science typically views consciousness as a byproduct of brain function, emerging research suggests that there may be dimensions of experience that remain unexplained by physical processes alone. The field of near-death studies, for instance, has documented instances where patients report vivid, verifiable experiences while their brains were seemingly non-functional. Could these experiences be related to the same phenomena observed in reincarnation cases? Some researchers propose that there may be underlying mechanisms, perhaps on a quantum level, that allow consciousness to persist beyond the physical death of the brain. This interdisciplinary inquiry forces us to rethink our assumptions about what it means to be alive. If we accept that our identity might stretch beyond the confines of a single lifetime, then the boundaries between science, spirituality, and philosophy begin to blur. Questions that were once relegated to the realm of religious myth are now being investigated with the tools of modern science, from brain imaging technologies to advanced statistical analyses of past life memories. Although no definitive proof has yet emerged, the accumulating evidence continues to challenge the prevailing materialistic worldview. At the heart of this exploration is a deeply personal quest for meaning. For many individuals, the idea of reincarnation is not just an abstract concept. It's a lived reality that offers a narrative for understanding their deepest experiences. Some recall vivid dreams that seem to carry the weight of forgotten lifetimes. Others experience sudden flashes of recognition when encountering a person or place that feels inexplicably familiar. These moments, however fleeting, can transform one's view of life from a linear progression to a dynamic, interconnected continuum. In our globalized world, where ideas and beliefs flow freely across cultures, the resurgence of interest in reincarnation reflects a broader longing for connection and understanding. Whether through past life regression therapy, spontaneous recollections, or culturally embedded rituals, the idea that we are eternal beings on an endless journey has captured the imagination of millions. It suggests that the trials we face in one life might serve as the groundwork for growth in another, and that our souls, like seasoned travelers, carry with them the wisdom of countless experiences. The discussion of reincarnation also invites us to explore the very nature of consciousness. Is our mind merely a product of neural activity, or is there something ineffable that transcends the physical? Some propose that consciousness could be a fundamental aspect of the universe, akin to space and time, a constant that flows through all existence, impervious to the temporary confines of the human body. This idea is both exhilarating and humbling, pushing us to consider that every moment of joy, pain, and wonder might contribute to a larger tapestry of experience that continues far beyond our current lives. As we navigate these uncharted waters, it becomes clear that the search for truth is as much an emotional and spiritual journey as it is a scientific one. The stories we've examined today are not merely curiosities to be dismissed or celebrated. They are profound reminders that life's deepest mysteries remain unresolved, urging us to remain open to possibilities beyond our limited understanding. Conclusion: a journey beyond the visible horizon. In the end, the 10 incredible reincarnation stories we've explored leave us with a compelling and transformative question. What if life is not a singular, isolated event, but an endless, interconnected journey of the soul? Each story, with its blend of unexplained details, verified historical facts, and deeply personal experiences, challenges us to rethink our understanding of existence. They serve as powerful reminders that the boundaries between life and death may be far more porous than we ever imagined. If even a fraction of these cases holds true, then our lives, every joy, every sorrow, every fleeting moment, might be part of an eternal narrative that transcends the physical realm. The notion that our consciousness endures, that our souls continue to learn and evolve through countless incarnations, offers both solace and inspiration. It suggests that death is not a final curtain call, but rather a doorway to a realm of infinite possibilities, a space where every ending is simply a new beginning waiting to unfold. For those who find comfort in these possibilities, the idea of reincarnation can reshape not only personal beliefs but also how we live our lives. It inspires us to cherish our relationships, act with greater kindness, and pursue our passions with the understanding that our true essence is far more enduring than the temporary vessel of the body. Even if skepticism persists, the exploration of these mysteries enriches our perspective, inviting us to embrace life with a renewed sense of wonder and open-hearted curiosity. Ultimately, the journey toward understanding reincarnation is not about reaching definitive answers. It's about the quest itself, the courage to question what we hold as absolute, and the humility to accept that the universe may be far grander than our limited perceptions allow. As you reflect on these stories and the ideas they evoke, remember that every unanswered question is an invitation to explore further, to seek out the magic hidden behind the veil of the everyday. May these stories inspire you to look beyond the visible horizon, to trust that there is more to our existence than meets the eye, and to remain forever curious about the eternal mystery of life.